There are days when the world feels like too much. Though nothing dramatic has happened, you go through the motions, smile when you must, reply politely, even laugh when expected. And yet, beneath it all, there is a quiet heaviness, not loud like a storm, but dense like a sky full of unfallen rain. A fatigue that no amount of sleep can cure. A loneliness that lingers even in the company of others. It is the weight of being everything for everyone, while slowly losing yourself. Some call it burnout. Others call it spiritual exhaustion. But in the teachings of the Buddha, it is simply seen as a moment of forgetting. Forgetting who you are beneath the noise. Forgetting the stillness beneath the roles. Forgetting that the answer is not somewhere outside, but resting quietly inside, waiting to be remembered. This moment right now is an invitation to stop, to breathe, to lay down the invisible burdens you've been carrying for so long. You don't need to fix yourself, perform, or prove anything here. Just be. Just listen. What follows is not a sermon or instruction. It is a path gently lit by timeless truths, 7 Buddhist lessons to help you stop shrinking, stop seeking approval, and begin walking in your own quiet dignity again. These are not answers from someone wiser than you. They are reminders of what you already know, but may have forgotten. So allow this space to hold you. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breath deepen, and let us begin together, not toward a finish line, but back to the heart of who you've always been. Lesson 1. You don't need to be admired to be whole. There is a quiet kind of suffering that settles into the soul, not loud or dramatic, but like a soft erosion. It happens when a person, over time, begins to trade their truth for the smile of another. When they nod instead of speak. When they dim their presence just enough to avoid standing out. Not because they are weak, but because at some point in their life, they were taught, often without words, that love is conditional, that belonging must be earned, and admiration became a currency. But Buddhist wisdom invites us to look deeper. You don't need to be admired to be whole. You were already whole before the world asked you to perform. In Buddhist teachings, this search for approval is rooted in tanha, craving. The Buddha spoke of 3 forms of craving that keep beings bound to suffering: craving for sense pleasure, craving for becoming, and craving for non-becoming. In the modern world, craving for becoming often hides beneath the need to be validated. We want to become liked, respected, admired, as if that would finally silence the inner voice that says we're not enough. But like a mirage in the desert, each step toward external approval leads us further from the wellspring within. There was once a monk who asked his master, "Why do I feel invisible when no one praises me?" The master, gazing at the ripples of a nearby pond, said only, "Does the moon stop shining when no one looks up?" So many live like that, moons clouded by doubt, forgetting that their light does not depend on being seen. This lesson is not about becoming indifferent or aloof. It is about liberation. When a person relies on applause to feel worthy, they tie their inner peace to something utterly unstable. Admiration is fleeting. Public opinion shifts like wind. The self that is built on praise must constantly shape, shift, perform, and fear the silence between claps. If you've ever walked into a room and scanned it for signs that you're enough, through glances, comments, attention, then you know the hunger well. But ask yourself, what part of you are you abandoning just to be accepted? The teachings of anatta, non-self, remind us that identity as we know it is not fixed. The roles we try to maintain, the agreeable one, the reliable one, the strong one, are all impermanent masks. And while it may feel safe to wear them, over time they suffocate. Recognition is not nourishment. It's spice, not rice. And a life built on spice alone will starve the soul. In Buddhist tradition, the most revered figures were not those who sought attention, but those who became deeply present. The Buddha himself sat under the Bodhi tree, not to be seen, but to understand. His presence changed the world, not because he demanded attention, but because he had found something immovable within himself. Be a lamp unto yourself, he taught. Not a spotlight, a lamp, quiet, steady, self-illuminating. You might ask, but if I don't try to impress others, won't I be forgotten? That fear is natural, but it misunderstands the nature of legacy. Real presence is not remembered in applause, but in the stillness it leaves behind. Think of the people who shaped your life. Do you remember their names or the warmth of their voice, the way they listened, the small kindness that came at just the right time? The deepest impact often comes from those who never asked to be admired. They were simply real, so breathe gently. Let go of the habit to prove, to perform, to perfect. Return to what is quiet and sincere in you. The lotus grows in muddy water. It doesn't wait for admiration to bloom. It simply rises because it must. Ask yourself today, not will they like me, but did I abandon myself trying to be liked? Because each time you turn away from your truth to earn love, a part of you fades. But each time you return, even silently, even trembling, something luminous begins to grow again. And when that happens, when you no longer need to be admired to feel whole, you become unshakable. Not hard, not distant, just deeply, truly, at peace. Lesson 2. Real presence doesn't perform. There is a kind of presence that enters a room without saying a word. No grand gesture, no clever line, no gaze demanding to be met. And yet everything softens around it. Conversations slow, breaths deepen, and even the restless feels steadier, if only for a moment. It's not charisma, it's not charm. It's something much quieter, more ancient. In Buddhism we might call it samadhi, the centered stillness of a person who is fully here, without striving to be seen. But the modern world has taught us another rhythm, a noisier one. Presence, it seems, must now be proven. We speak louder to feel heard, dress brighter, to be noticed, edit ourselves, online and in real life, so that others might stop scrolling and finally say, "You matter." And yet, the more we perform, the less we feel. The more we chase attention, the further we drift from ourselves. It is one of the great paradoxes of this age. We try to be seen, but forget to be present. The Buddha didn't teach presence as performance. He taught it as a homecoming. To be present is not to be on display. It is to return to the breath, to the body, to the heart, beating softly beneath all fear. In the Satipa Inuhana Sutta, the Buddha said, "There is one thing that leads to liberation, to peace, to awakening mindfulness. And mindfulness is not outward, it is inward, rooted in awareness, not approval." There's a Zen story of a student who asked the master, "How can I become more powerful in front of others?" The master replied, "Be still enough that even the leaves notice." This stillness is not passivity. It is power without aggression. It is the strength to resist the itch, to explain yourself, the courage to speak less, and the wisdom to see that presence is not built by effort, but by emptiness. The spacious kind of emptiness that allows others to breathe in your company. Have you noticed? Those who truly listen are remembered long after the loud ones leave. The ones who pause before speaking, the ones who don't fill silence with nervous words. Their presence lingers, not because they performed, but because they were there. And so Buddhist presence is not theatrical, it is anchored. It does not demand spotlight, It becomes the lamp in the corner of the room, quiet, but impossible to ignore. But this kind of presence cannot be faked. You can't wear it like a coat. It arises naturally when you are no longer trying to be anyone but yourself. When your breath is more important than your reputation. When you walk into a space and check not who is watching, but how your feet feel on the floor. And here is where the practice begins. Next time you speak, try saying just enough. Then stop. No disclaimers, no over-explaining. Just one clear sentence, rooted in truth. Next time you feel overlooked, don't rush to correct it. Observe the ache, breathe with it, and see if it changes shape. Real presence is not in the noise you make. It's in the quiet confidence you carry when you no longer need to be impressive. There was a monk, old and nearly forgotten by his monastery, who sat each morning at the same stone bench. He never gave sermons, never led chants, but the young novices one by one began to sit near him, not for answers, but for the peace they felt in his silence. When asked what his practice was, he only said, "I stopped trying to be interesting. I just decided to be here." This is the lesson. You don't have to dazzle to be felt. You don't need to shine to be real. You only need to arrive, fully, honestly, without pretending. Let your breath arrive before your words. Let your stillness speak first. And if someone never notices you again, let that be their blindness, not your burden. Because the truth is, the most radiant people often move quietly. Their presence isn't made of applause, it's made of alignment. They walk slowly, speak softly, and live truthfully. And in a world that is always trying to shout over silence, that is presence, that is power. Lesson 3. Self-command is the root of compassion. There is a moment in every person's life, not dramatic, not loud, when they realize they've been drifting, not lost exactly, but pulled by other people's moods, desires, disappointments, pulled by the fear of being disliked, pulled by the invisible hands of habit. And in that quiet realization, something aches, a recognition that while they've been kind, they've also been bending too far, that in choosing peace for others, they've abandoned peace within. This lesson is not about control in the worldly sense. It is not about suppressing emotion or stiffening the spine. In Buddhist practice, self-command is not dominance. It is tenderness disciplined by clarity. It is the ability to act from presence, not pressure, to speak from truth, not tension, to stay grounded, even when the winds of someone else's chaos blow hard. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha says, "Though one may conquer 1,000 men in battle, the one who conquers himself is the greatest of warriors." This battle is not fought with fists, but with awareness. The enemy is not others. It is reactivity, impulse, forgetfulness. A person who lacks self-command becomes a mirror. They reflect everyone around them. If someone is upset, they absorb it. If someone is demanding, they comply. Their internal compass spins wildly, not because they lack value, but because they've never been taught to protect it. They confuse compassion with obedience, patience with silence, love with compliance. But Buddhist compassion does not mean self-erasure. True Karuda compassion is rooted in wisdom. It sees suffering clearly and responds without causing more harm. And sometimes, the greatest harm we cause is the one we allow silently inside our own hearts, when we say yes with our lips, but no with our breath. Self-command is the practice of saying no with love, of stepping back not out of coldness, but clarity. It is knowing that your worth does not increase by how much you tolerate, but by how fully you remain yourself amid noise. There's an old story of a monk who each morning swept leaves from the temple path. One day, a visitor laughed and said, "Why bother? The wind will just blow more leaves." The monk smiled and said, "I sweep not to clear the path, but to remember that it is mine. This is the heart of self-command, not to control life, but to remember which ground is yours, which values are yours, which pace, which truth, which response arises from your deepest peace. If you've ever left a conversation feeling like you've betrayed your own heart, shrunk your words, softened your boundary, stayed silent to avoid discomfort, pause here. Ask gently, what part of me am I protecting, and what part of me am I abandoning? In Buddhist practice, every moment is an invitation to return. You don't need to scold yourself for being reactive. Simply see it. Witness the wave. Don't ride it. Don't judge it. Just notice, this is the part of me that fears disapproval. And breathe. That breath is a turning point, a return to the center. Self-command is also built through small, invisible rituals, choosing stillness over noise, turning down an invitation when your body says rest, declining false praise, refusing to fake joy just to ease someone's discomfort. And yes, even disappointing others so that you can honor yourself. And here is a truth I've come to understand. Only with age, compassion, without self-respect, becomes servitude. You are not a vessel to carry everyone else's burdens while leaking your own essence drop by drop. One of the most radical acts of Buddhist practice is this: to protect your clarity like a sacred fire, not just from others, but from your own habits of self-abandonment. Because when you no longer need to say yes to be loved, when you no longer mistake exhaustion for virtue, when you no longer need others to be okay for you to be okay, that is freedom, that is self-command. And from that steady ground, real compassion can finally arise. Lesson 4. Your boundaries are sacred. There is a quiet erosion that happens when we allow the line between kindness and self-erasure to blur. It doesn't come all at once. It leaks slowly. A small compromise here, a forced smile there. The joke that stings but we laugh anyway. The request we didn't want to say yes to, but did, just to avoid the discomfort. We tell ourselves it's not worth the trouble. We're keeping the peace. But inside, something frays. Buddhism does not ask us to build walls. It does not teach rejection or retreat from the world. But it does invite us to be deeply honest, to see clearly where we end and where another begins. In this clarity, boundaries are not barriers. They are expressions of compassion for ourselves and for those around us. The Buddha taught that right view, the first element of the Noble Eightfold Path, means seeing things as they truly are. And to see clearly, one must recognize when a pattern, a person, or a place continually asks you to shrink in order to stay. A boundary is not cruelty. A boundary is saying, I will not participate in my own diminishment. There's a Zen parable about a young monk named Soren. He was known for his gentleness, always agreeable, always obliging. Elders praised him as the one who never stirs the water. One day, a senior monk took credit for a teaching Soren had given. He said nothing. Another time, someone belittled his posture during meditation. He lowered his eyes and bowed. Slowly, the others began assigning him all the extra chores because he never said no. And one evening, Soren stood alone in the candlelit hall, looking at his reflection in a bowl of water. He whispered, "If I disappear one day, will anyone notice? Or has my silence already erased me?" That moment was the beginning of his return. He didn't shout. He didn't demand. He simply began to hold his dignity with a quieter firmness. He stopped volunteering to be used. He stopped agreeing just to keep affection, and he started walking as though his time, energy, and spirit mattered. He became no less kind, but he was no longer available to those who thrived on his invisibility. How many of us live like Soren? Buddhist practice asks for compassion, yes, but not the kind that costs us our peace. When we confuse being agreeable with being loving, we not only harm ourselves, we deprive the world of our truth. We teach people how to treat us, not through our words, but through what we allow, excuse, and repeat. Do not give what is not asked, the Buddha advised. Do not take what is not offered. This too is a teaching about boundaries. It reminds us that true giving is never coerced. True love is never extracted. And when you begin to set a boundary, however small, you will feel discomfort. That is natural. You may feel guilt, fear, or the sharp edge of loneliness. But remember this, guilt is not always a sign of wrongdoing. Sometimes it's the residue of old conditioning peeling away. Start gently. Name the places where you bend too much. Write down one situation where your boundary has been crossed repeatedly. Then ask yourself, what would love look like here? Not for them, but for me, and act accordingly. Maybe it's saying no without apology. Maybe it's not responding immediately. Maybe it's ending a relationship that thrives on your silence. And when others pull away because you no longer shrink, let them go. As one forest monk once said, when the leaves fall, the tree does not chase them. It waits for spring. Some people are not meant to stay. Their exit is not your failure. It is the space where your deeper life can begin. In Buddhism, we walk the middle way, not too rigid, not too yielding. Boundaries are the middle path of love and wisdom. They say, I respect you, and I respect myself too. So hold your line, not out of pride, but out of clarity. Not to punish, but to protect. Because every time you uphold your boundary, you are not building distance, you are building truth. And in a noisy world, truth is a rare and sacred thing. Lesson 5. Even silence has a cost when it hides your pain. There is a kind of silence that soothes, a pause after breath, a moment of stillness between thoughts. But there is also a silence that stings, a silence that hides too much, that swallows what aches to be spoken, not out of wisdom, but out of fear, not out of peace, but out of habit. That kind of silence doesn't bring freedom. It quietly erodes us from within. In Buddhist thought, right speech is not only about what we say, it is also about what we choose not to say. It teaches discernment. Some silence is powerful, but when silence is used to conceal our pain, to make others comfortable at the expense of our own well-being, it becomes a mask. And masks, no matter how skillfully worn, eventually become suffocating. Many people carry invisible wounds because they have learned to equate kindness with silence. Somewhere along the way, they were told that voicing discomfort is impolite, that boundaries are selfish, that conflict is failure, so they bite their tongue, they fake a smile, they excuse behavior that chips away at their dignity. And with each moment of silence, the message is reinforced: your peace doesn't matter, only theirs does. But Buddhism gently asks, at what cost? The Buddha taught, better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. But that peace is not always external. Sometimes it is the peace of finally saying something true, even if it trembles, even if it disrupts. Let us consider Maya, a woman in her 60s who had spent her life as the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over tension, who absorbed others' anger, who prided herself on not making things worse. She wore her silence like armor, until one day, during a family gathering, her son made a mocking comment, light-hearted on the surface, but rooted in years of subtle dismissal. Everyone laughed. Maya smiled, as always. But that night, she sat alone and cried. Not because of the joke, but because she had trained everyone, unknowingly, to laugh at her discomfort. That moment was her awakening. She realized her silence had never protected the peace. It had only postponed her own reckoning. This is what hidden silence does. It keeps us quiet while our spirit whispers. This isn't right, and over time, those whispers become harder to hear beneath the noise of performing, pretending, enduring. Buddhism encourages us to sit with discomfort, not to suppress it, but to meet it. When silence is chosen from clarity, it can be healing. But when silence is chosen from fear, it becomes avoidance. And avoidance never truly frees us. It simply delays the inevitable return of pain. You don't need to raise your voice to speak truth. You don't need to confront with anger to make a boundary known. But you do need to honor what is real within you. That is ahimsa, non-harming, not just toward others, but toward yourself. So ask gently, what have you been silent about that still echoes inside you? A friend's careless word, a partner's disregard, a job that drains your soul, a fear of being dismissed. If you show your hurt, you are not weak for wanting to be respected. You are not dramatic for needing to be heard. And you are not unspiritual for expressing pain. There's a Zen saying, speak only if it improves upon the silence. But here is the deeper layer. Sometimes silence is only silence because your truth has been missing. Try this. The next time someone crosses a subtle line, say nothing out loud, but let your stillness carry weight. Let your eyes meet theirs without retreat. Let your silence say, I saw that. I felt that. I will not pretend it didn't matter. And when you are ready, speak, even softly, even if it shakes. Because your voice is not a disruption, it is a remembering. And your presence is not here to be muted. When we reclaim the silence that heals and release the silence that hides, we begin to walk with a different kind of peace. One that doesn't demand attention, but also refuses to be erased. This is not rebellion, this is awakening. Lesson 6. Love yourself. Even in your unfinished form, there is a deep, tender sorrow that lives beneath many lives. The feeling of not being enough yet, not wise enough, not calm enough, not accomplished, not whole. It's the ache of the unfinished, the quiet pressure to become someone better before allowing love to rest gently upon your own heart. But Buddhism teaches us something radically different. You are not a project to be fixed, you are a being to be understood. And even now, even in your raw, restless, imperfect form, you are worthy of compassion. We live in a world that sells us completion, polished images, flawless habits, curated lives. We are told that once we improve, once we master ourselves, once we become enlightened enough, then we can finally rest in self-love. But Buddhist wisdom doesn't wait for perfection. It meets us exactly where we are, with open hands and soft eyes. The Buddha himself did not speak of self-love as a destination. He spoke of metta, loving kindness, as a practice, not as a reward, but as a way of being. And that loving kindness begins not with others, but with ourselves. In the Metta Sutta, the Buddha urges us, let one cultivate a boundless heart toward all beings and toward oneself. A boundless heart does not say, I will love you when. It simply says, I love you now. But how difficult that can feel, especially when mistakes linger, when regrets whisper at night, when aging reveals what youth once concealed, when the body slows and the mind clings to the idea that love must be earned. And yet, even a cracked bowl can hold water. Even a flickering candle still brings light. There's a story of Elijah, a man in his 40s who believed his failures defined him. He had tried and failed at building something meaningful. 3 businesses collapsed. Each time, he took the blame, not just for the outcome, but for being the kind of person he believed couldn't succeed. And so he closed in. He became his own judge, jury, and sentence. Until one evening, he remembered something his father used to say while fixing old engines. A man is not proven when everything works. He's proven when something breaks, and he still shows up. That became Elijah's new practice, not fixing himself, but staying. Staying present with the broken parts. Staying kind when the shame spoke. Staying patient when progress was slow. Each day, he wrote just one sentence in a notebook. Today I showed up, not perfectly, not triumphantly, just honestly. And something began to shift. You too might feel unfinished. Maybe you see all the ways you're still struggling, the habits you wish you could break, the thoughts that haunt you, the softness you haven't yet allowed yourself to feel. But let me ask, have you ever offered love to yourself in this very form without waiting? Imagine speaking to yourself as you would to a dear friend. You would not say, "I'll love you when you get it all right." You'd say, "I see how hard you're trying. I'm here." This is the doorway to healing. Not self-improvement, but self-returning. To place your hand on your own chest during moments of despair and say, "May I be kind to myself in this moment," not as a performance, not as a spiritual technique, but as a prayer from the tired heart to the deeper self. And what does this kindness look like? It looks like resting when you're exhausted, without guilt. It looks like laughing, even when you're not where you thought you'd be. It looks like forgiving the version of you that did the best they could with what they knew. It looks like allowing joy to arise in small things, a warm cup of tea, a bird outside the window, a breath that didn't collapse under pressure. Self-love in Buddhism is not indulgence. It is non-harming. It is saying, "I will no longer speak to myself in a way that creates more suffering." And that begins not with achieving more, but with accepting what already is. So today, ask yourself gently, can I love the person I am, not the one I hope to become, not the one others approve of, but this one, here, now, breathing? Because the truth is, you are not a flawed version of someone better. You are a sacred unfolding, a soft and slow blooming. And you deserve to be loved at every stage of that becoming. As the Zen poet Rilke once wrote, "With no mind blossoms invite the butterfly. With no mind, the butterfly enters the blossom." Let yourself be both blossom and butterfly, unfinished and still radiant. Lesson 7. The journey shapes you more than the outcome ever will. We are taught from a young age to focus on the destination, to keep our eyes on the goal, the finish line, the result. Success becomes a measure of arrival, and failure a sign that we haven't yet earned our worth. But in Buddhist wisdom, there is a gentler truth. You are not here to arrive, you are here to walk. So many carry the quiet burden of not being there yet. They measure their life by what they haven't achieved, by how far they still have to go. And in doing so, they miss the sacred unfolding of the present, the soft strength built in the steps themselves, the grace hidden in each moment of choosing not to give up. The Buddha never promised a destination filled with accolades. He offered a path, Magga, the Noble Eightfold Path, a way of being, not a prize to be won. And on this path, the most powerful transformation doesn't come from crossing the finish line, but from learning how to walk with awareness, with integrity, with presence. In truth, the outcome can be stolen, delayed, or denied. But the way you walk, no one can take that from you. There was once a woman named Anjali. She spent her life chasing excellence, the perfect home, the perfect body, the perfect spiritual life. She fasted, meditated for hours, read every book, but still, She felt hollow. One day her teacher asked her, "Why do you sit each morning?" She replied, "To become enlightened." He smiled and said, "Then each breath will be a test. But if you sit just to sit, peace will find you first." That was her turning point. She began to walk slower, to notice the ground, to sip her tea without rushing to the next chapter of her life. And in that slowness, she discovered something startling. She was no longer chasing peace. It was already walking beside her. Outcomes are seductive. They promise completion. But completion is an illusion. Even the tree that stands tall is still growing. Even the enlightened ones continued to meditate. The lotus does not bloom once. It blooms, fades, and blooms again. So if you've been feeling behind, left out, as if you missed your chance, let this be your reminder. You have not missed anything real. You are still breathing. And each step you take from mindfulness, from love, from truth, is shaping the very essence of who you are becoming. Do you know what real self-respect looks like? It looks like waking up and choosing the next right thing, even if no one sees it. It's turning toward discomfort instead of running. It's speaking kindly when your thoughts are harsh. It's sitting quietly when the world tells you to hustle louder. It's choosing to show up again and again, not because you're winning, but because you refuse to abandon your path. The world may never reward you for these quiet choices. There are no medals for choosing integrity over applause, but those moments, small as they seem, are sacred. They are seeds, and the garden they grow within you, that is the real achievement. A jug is filled drop by drop. The Buddha said, not in bursts, not in fame, but in consistent presence. So ask yourself, not did I succeed today, but did I walk gently? Did I stay true? Did I return when I strayed? Because in the end, no one remembers the trophies. What we remember is how someone made us feel, how they moved through the world, whether they walked in peace or chaos, whether they lived for love or for applause. And that's the final invitation of this journey, to shift your gaze from the horizon to your own 2 feet, to release the need to make it, and embrace the courage it takes just to keep going, to realize that you are already becoming who you were meant to be, not through what you finish, but through how you live. And perhaps the most important question you can ask at the end of any day is not, did I impress anyone, but simply, did I live honestly enough that I no longer need to lower myself to be loved? Because when you value the journey, truly value it, you stop asking the world for permission to be enough. You already are, and that is the kind of dignity no one can give or take away. There comes a point in the journey, not marked by fireworks or applause, when you quietly realize you no longer need to be smaller to belong. You no longer have to dim your light for someone else's comfort. You no longer need to explain your boundaries, defend your peace, or perform your worth. You simply come home to yourself. These 7 Buddhist lessons were never meant to toughen you, but to soften what has grown tense from years of self-abandonment. They are not rules to follow, but invitations to remember you are already enough, not because of what you've achieved, but because of how you've walked. You have walked through doubt, through silence, through years of trying to be what others needed. But now, perhaps, it's time to be what you need. Steady, rooted, kind. The Buddha never asked us to become perfect. He simply asked us to wake up, to the present, to the truth, to our own sacred presence. And in that awakening, dignity is not something we earn. It is something we remember. So if today you feel tired of shrinking, tired of waiting for someone else to grant you permission to be whole, pause, place your hand over your heart, breathe in gently, and ask, can I return to myself now? Because in the end, the path is not upward or forward, it is inward. And the way home is always here, in the quiet strength of a heart that no longer needs to be admired to finally feel free. You are already walking that path, step by step, breath by breath. No applause needed, just presence, just truth, just you. Namaste.